This episode of Speak Now, Hold Your Peace is brought to you in part by Green Sister Botanicals, plant based hair and body care. Visit greensister.com for your hair and body care needs.
She's good. She's good.
Every time there's a shooting, people are saying, we need more gun control.
That's just human nature.
Welcome to Speak Now, Hold Your Peace, a live broadcast with real conversations about community social issues, politics, business, health, self-care, and more. We broadcast live on the Speak Now, Hold Your Peace Facebook group and the Speak Now, Hold Your Peace YouTube channel. And now, here's your host, Say What I Feel, Dre.
Welcome to Speak Now, Hold Your Peace. I'm Say What I Feel, Dre, and today we're going to have a special guest. We're going to talk about parental rights in the education system. So I don't want to delay. I want to bring my guest right in. So let's bring in my guest, Terry Tyler. Terry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm all right. Doing all right. Can't complain. Just for the listeners to know, it's interesting that I was talking about my show and stuff, and somehow Terry and I got to talking, and she told me she had a history in education in terms of special education. So I thought she would be an asset to the show, and I honestly think she is, because she's an asset as a coworker, very informative and willing to give a hand to anybody that she works with, and I welcome that type of personality, that type of work ethic to anybody to come on this show. So I have Terry, and we're going to talk about parental rights in special ed. But before we get into it, there's one thing I would like to mention. When we talk about special ed, special education, a lot of times, as a case manager, I have parents who ask me to attend the meeting because some of them are defensive about what the school is going to do, and the school getting slick, as they would say, and stuff like that. With special education, it's not the parent versus the school. I want to make that clear. The teachers are not out to out slick you. The staff is not out to out slick you or anything like that. Sometimes you will get some people who want to not so much run from their job and do what they're supposed to do, but sometimes there's some shortcuts, and people like to take shortcuts. But it's not everybody. Just like there's good people in the world and there's bad people in the world. You can't say everybody in the world is bad. You can't say everybody in the world is good. So I want to make that clear before we get started, that this is not a shot at the school system or the teachers. Okay, that they are on our side, trying to help us out, help our children out. So I just wanted to put that out there. So let's get started. Terry, Terry, can you just give us a little history of your work in special education?
Sure. I've actually been working in special education since the 1990s. My son was diagnosed with with special needs. So at the time, I knew nothing about his disability. I knew nothing about his rights. I knew nothing about anything. So through the years, people have come by and taught me different things, but I started writing my first IEP in 1993. When he was 3 years old, and I've been written 100, 1,000, and I've been writing IEPs since. One of the things I had to do was learn how to educate myself. So I have a degree in early childhood education. I have a degree in child development, but I also have a degree in human services. So in getting all my degrees, I learned different aspects of special education. But my biggest way I taught myself was learning how to advocate for my son. Because back in the 1990s, there wasn't a lot of advocacy. There wasn't no one to teach you what's the appropriate IEP, how the IEP process worked. They didn't tell you different things. I mean, like she said, teachers weren't taking advantage of you, but because you were a parent and new to the system, you just didn't know your rights. And even though they told you your rights, you may not have understood them. So
Right.
that's how I really learned on writing IEPs and knowing the education, special education system. I also have been on the Special Education Advisory Board. I was co-chair in Spotsylvania County. So I sat with the Department of Education in Richmond, and they taught me the different laws and different things like that. So I've got a lot of, over 30 years of experience working with special education and been working with people that do this every day.
Right. Right. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of information, y'all. 'Cause we got a walking special education dictionary or encyclopedia. Well, nobody uses encyclopedias anymore. That's old school. But we got a walking internet here full of knowledge. So let me ask you this first question, Terry. Who's eligible for special education?
Anybody that's been identified to having some type of difficulty in learning. Special education, like if you have a child that's having issues with speech, that's qualified for special education. So maybe they talk, but they don't talk as well as their peers. A child that doesn't read very well, a child that has problem with writing or math, a child that has visual difficulties, not just glasses, but they have something wrong with their vision that impairs their learning. Special education laws is about allowing a child to be taught like a quote unquote normal child. So any impairity that may be happening, or disability or special needs that may be happening that impairs their ability to learn, that's when they qualify for special education.
Okay. Okay. Now, sometimes in my recent years I taught back in I taught in 2000. My last year teaching was 2005, I believe. And during my time teaching, there were parents who wanted their child tested, and there were parents in which were being begged to have their child tested. So it's like you had both sides of the coin. Those parents who wanted their child tested, in this particular school, it was a little difficult. I don't know the particulars of why it was so difficult. I don't know if it was a staffing issue or just a time issue in which where they had to wait a while for the child to get tested because there were so many kids. But what are some of the challenges that parents have that you may know of with getting their child tested? Are there any challenges in doing it, or is it just pretty much you let them know you want to do it and they do it?
It's supposed to be you let them know that you want to do it and they do it.
Okay.
The way the law is written, the way IDEA in Virginia and all of the state laws are from IDEA. So basically IDEA, federal law, states that a parent, what I tell my parents, you do a written request for assessment. They have 10 days in which to sit down and have a meeting with you and figure out why you want the assessment. And then if they agree to do the assessment, then they have 60 days from the date of that meeting to have it all complete. And then they say whether or not your child qualifies for special education. Now, if they refuse to give you the assessment and they feel like the child doesn't need to be assessed, then you have different steps that as a parent you can do. You can write to state and be like, hey, I asked for my child to be assessed and the school is refusing, and give the reasons. Mm-hmm. And the way this law is written, they really can't refuse. They're not supposed to. Even if they don't think it, they can do a quick assessment, and through the assessment process, they can decide whether or not a child needs special education. But they're not supposed to be a refusal. Right. And so that's a lot of the challenges with parents, is because they get told no and they don't push the issue because they don't know their rights, that there isn't really a refusal. Even if it's like I had a child who has diagnosed with autism, they didn't want to give him an IEP because he did so well in school. But under Virginia state law, it didn't make a difference if he was passing, if he didn't have any issues he had behavior issues that affected his learning. So he rated the IEP. And I had to fight to get this child an IEP because all they kept saying is he makes straight A's. That's not the criteria for IEP.
Right.
The IEP looks at the disability.
Right. It's funny that you say that because I was currently dealing with a parent who wanted their child tested because he's autistic, and they kept telling her that he gets good grades, which there's a lot of issues, and I mean there's a lot of reasons for special ed, and
Right.
it's not about the grades all the time. They could still have a learn. I think they still can have a learning disability even though they get good grades. Some of the grades may be
That's
A's, B's and C's, and it could be A's and B's if they get one particular adjustment in
but
their
that's the
IEP.
whole that's the whole point. Like with an autistic child, autistic children typically have socialization issues. So if you like the child has autism, he may have what we call Asperger's syndrome, where he's extremely smart. So when it comes to academics, he's fine, but socially he's awkward. He's aggressive. He's angry. And see, IEP provides him certain protections that quote unquote normal children don't have. So
Mhm.
under IEP, he can have behavior intervention plans. So if he acts out, they can't just suspend him. They
Right.
have to do certain things prior to suspension. So a lot of times that's their excuse. Like I had one parent told a parent, well, we're not going to do an IEP because she's had too many absences. And they must have saw my face because immediately changed. Because I looked at them like, are you no, that's not a reason,
Wow.
But again, because parents don't know their rights and because the school will give you what they call your procedural rights, which they have to do under law. But the procedural rights is not exhausted explanation of your rights. Like I
Right.
was telling you, every procedure has 15 or 20 sub procedures underneath it. So if
Hmm.
I don't understand the sub procedures, I still don't know what I'm supposed to get and how to get it for myself.
Right. Right. And I want to bring this up, and I've been put in situations where I'm trying to think of one that kind of relates to this. Okay, so this is a long time ago. I needed a ride somewhere. I guess we were
Mm-mm.
going to a football game or something, and I went with some friends, and it was a last minute thing. So I'm just like, I need a ride, and if they could ride me, I'll just be grateful. I don't care what, I'm just grateful that I got the ride, and I was just grateful that I was getting a ride to this game, right? So then two other people were in a car with me, including the driver, and the driver kept stopping to get this, get that, and the two people were complaining like, "Yo, come on, man, we're gonna be late for the game. We're gonna be late for the game." And me, I was just like, "Nah, I ain't saying jack. I'm just happy to be here." You know what I'm saying? And I think in these IEP meetings, I think a lot of parents are are in the same position. Not so much happy to be here, but they're like, I feel like they're there, you know, but they feel that they don't have no rights or no say into what decisions are made at that meeting. Just like I don't feel like I have a decision or the right to say anything about this guy stopping in the car because I'm just bumming a ride myself. I'm just happy to be here. I mean, I'm just here. So with special ed, I think I see a lot of parents who just won't say nothing. They're content with just happy with having their child get services, and a lot of times they just don't think that they can say something. They think they have no say. When in actuality they have a lot of say. In all actuality they have a lot of say. So I just think that's interesting. Like there's a lot of parents who don't, who are just scared to say something. You know what I'm saying?
And I
So
think also parents don't know their children's disability. They don't understand it. So when you have a parent that say you have a child with autism or a child with ADHD, they're like, oh, he's just hyper, he won't sit down. They don't understand the wholeness of that diagnosis in the different parts of it. So when they sit in a meeting, the school is saying, hey, I'm gonna help you and I'm gonna do these services for you. And they're like, oh, thank you, because I just need him to sit still. I need him to be educated. I need him not to be suspended, and that's what their mindset is. And because they don't understand their rights and because they don't understand their child's disability, they don't get the fullness of what they can get. Also, parents don't understand they're the driving force. I tell a parent in a minute, if you don't agree, don't sign the IP.
right,
Because
right,
trust and believe, if you say I'm not signing it, they're going to jump through hoops to give you what you need.
right, right. Yep.
Because if you sign it, then you can get it unsigned. I mean, it's easy. Say, if you sign an IEP and then have buyer remorse, all you got to do is submit a request for a new IEP and they have to give it to you within 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to want to, but under the law, they have to give you a new IEP in 30 days.
Wow.
So if you sign the IEP and don't agree, you can then come back and request. They're going to try everything they can. But that's why I tell parents to do everything in writing. Once you write it down and submit it, they have to follow the law.
Mm-hmm.
But like to say what you were saying, I'm just happy to be here. A lot of parents are. They're just happy to be in a meeting because and the teachers are not telling them wrong. Again, it's not a teacher trying to fool them, but the teacher is saying, hey, we can help him. And they're like, okay, because all they know is he's struggling or the child is struggling, so they want help, but they don't understand their rights.
Right.
And
right.
once they learn their rights and once they understand the diagnosis, once they understand what the child may actually need, then the IEP can be more productive. Because I find that's the biggest problem with IEP. If you don't know your child's disability well and you don't know what he actually needs, then you're going to go by what the school is telling you.
Right. Right. Yep.
And like, again, it's not that they're trying to hurt you, but they usually do, well, this works for everybody, so this is what we're going to do.
Right.
And the IEP is supposed to be individualized
Yep.
for that particular child.
It's not a one size fits all.
No, it's not.
And, they kind of do a template to kind of make it like a one size fits all and make one change here and there. But, and not all of them, but, some of them.
Yeah. And again, they do the best they can because they're looking for parent feedback. So what happens if you don't have a parent that is educated on stuff, then they're going to go with what they know works.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you don't individualize your child, or if you don't say, oh, well, he does this and I need to address this in the classroom, then they're not going to address it. They're going to go, well, he has ADHD, and most kids, if they take their medication and we give them read aloud and we give them breaks and we do this, and this, he should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that may not be the case because with the ADHD, because of the ADHD, he may have other disabilities that haven't been found out because of behavioral issues.
Right, right. Let me ask you this, Terry. What are some of the signs? I know there's probably a lot of them, but what are some of the major signs that you've seen that a child needs special education services in terms of academics and in terms of behavior?
Well, one of the biggest signs, we'll go with behavior first. The behavior first. If a child is throwing chairs in the classroom, he need an IEP. You know what I'm saying? If he in the classroom, turning the classroom up, I'm like automatically, all right, we need an IEP for this child.
Right, right.
If you have a child that's in the classroom, I had one little boy, he was the sweetest thing. But that little man would go in that classroom and he would walk the entire class period. He needed an IEP because it was certain teachers that would tolerate it because even though he was walking, he wasn't really bothering nobody.
Right.
So they let him, they would limit him to walking back and forth in the back so that he wouldn't disturb the other students. But there was other teachers that wouldn't tolerate and they would put him out the class. Well, then he missed learning. So like I said, anything that impedes a child's ability to learn. So if a child can't read, they need an IEP. Because if you're in the 9th grade and on reading on a 3rd grade level, how can you pass the SOL? How can you even understand your comprehension is at a 3rd grade level. So 9th grade words or vocabulary means nothing to you. Right. But those type of children act out. When I did TDT, I had a girl that acted out every time she went to social studies. This child would, show off. And you'd be looking at her, she couldn't read. She couldn't read. So because she couldn't read, she didn't want nobody to know she couldn't read. So she would act out.
Yeah. Wow. We see that a lot too. Yeah.
So it's like children that have math problems. If you have a child that has a problem that doesn't do well in math, they have some type of math. So it's like behavior wise, you're looking at, just overblown behaviors, throwing chairs, running out the classroom, screaming and hollering, fighting. All of those things may indicate some type of need for IEP. But a child, for educational wise, a child that can't read, a child that has poor comprehension, a child that doesn't do well in math, a child that processes slowly. That's another thing. People don't realize how you think A child can learn, but they may take them longer to think through a process. So processing, visual. I have a nephew whose eyes bounce. He needs an IEP because even though he wears glasses, his vision is messed up because his eyes bounce. It's neurological. So, but his eyes bounce. So, I mean, a child that may have been born with deaf, or a child that may have some hearing loss, traumatic brain injury,
Mm.
anything like that are the reasons that a child will get an IEP.
Okay. Okay.
Of course, autism and intellectual delays.
Right. Right. So what typically? Okay. So we find out the child needs an IEP. We go through the steps,
Mhm.
and he or she gets the IEP. What happens in that meeting? What typically happens in an IEP meeting? The initial meeting.
Okay. Well, typically in the initial meeting, you have a team. So you have what they call a designated LEA, which is the somebody from downtown, and from the city, Hampton City Schools, special education department. Then you have assistant principal. Then you have a general ed teacher, a special education teacher. You have a social worker, psychologist, anybody that did any testing, they'll be there. Speech therapy, occupational physical therapy, all of those people will be the parent, and any person that the parent wants to bring with them.
Okay.
Again, the parent has to remember they're the most powerful person in the room. Because it don't make a
Right.
difference what nobody say. If I say no, then it's an absolute no. And you can't force me. And you can't say, well, if you don't sign it, we won't give them special education services either. So I have that much power. If I say no, you have to figure out what I want in order to get him. But then they go through the assessment. Once they go through the assessment, they identify his needs. They'll identify his educational needs and his behavior needs. And then they'll also do an assessment. They'll have a present level of performance. So they'll look at this is what he's currently doing. So they'll be like, if they did reading testing, they'll be like, he reads, if he's in ninth grade, they'll be like, he reads sixth grade 9 months, meaning that he reads on sixth grade level 9 months into the school year, but he's
Mhm.
on ninth grade. If he has math disabilities, they'll tell you that. But basically, they go over the paperwork, tell you what they found, and then they give you their suggestions.
Got you. Okay.
And then from their suggestions where it goes, and then their accommodation. So there's two parts. You have the present level of performance, the accommodation that they feel would need to address the performance delay, and the goals that they're going to use to get to improving the performance. Everything about an IEP goal is about the child improving. The
Right.
child should never regress, and they should never be stagnated. So if you're writing the same goal every year and your child's not progressing, then the IEP is not correct.
Right. Right.
So, but like I said, all these people are in there in the meeting, and usually the first meeting takes a while because you are literally going through every piece of information. And what they typically try to do is draw the parent out. A lot of parents take it the wrong way because when your child has special needs or have a disability, you take it as if you failed your child or something is wrong. So
Right.
once you
Right.
get parents past that initial what did I do wrong or guilt or shame about the situation, then you can get them to talk about their experience with the child and what they've seen. And the school needs that, because if they can get a clear, because testing tell them one thing, but personal experience tell them something else.
Right.
Well, when you help him with homework, does he get frustrated when you're doing this? That helps them make better goals. And
Right.
then once they make the goals and then they do the accommodation, does he need read aloud? Does he need extra time for tests? Does he need breaks? Does he need a calculator? Things like that. Then they write down what they call least restrictive environment. So that under the law, a child cannot be put in a classroom, what they call a self-contained classroom, if he can be educated with his peers. That's the whole point of special education. So if a child can be educated with their peers, they don't like to put them in what we call self-contained classroom, where it's a classroom full of children that may have a specific disability.
Right.
So if the child can be educated with their peers, then they start doing what they call special education minutes.
Mm-hmm.
How many minutes will he get special education where somebody will come and work with him on this particular special needs? And then how many minutes of general education will he get with his peers? And how much will it be combined? Because, in high school, they they have special education teachers in the classroom with general ed. So the kids, they help everybody, but they know their clients that they're supposed to be helping. You know what I'm saying?
Got you. Got you.
So
Yeah.
it's not like you get the separation. Well, oh my God, he needs help. He kind of helps everyone in the classroom, even though specifically they're supposed to be working with certain kids. So that's how. And once all that's done, then you have the IEP.
Okay.
So it's a complicated multi-step process that they usually take about an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours to write an IEP effectively.
Now, have you ever? I know you said the parents can bring anybody they want. Um, I've heard. I've never seen it, but I've heard some people bring lawyers, case managers. Have you ever seen that in your experience? Like, who should they bring? What who should they bring? And if it's their first time coming to an IEP meeting, just new to it all.
Well, people hated to be in my IEP meetings because I've had a 5-hour IEP meeting. And I've had so many people sitting at the table that we literally sat there for 5 hours. I brought advocates, I brought educational specialists, I brought autism specialists. I mean, I have brought a lot of people. But for a parent that's first starting out, I would suggest that they would bring somebody they trust. If you feel like your child's not getting what they need, then of course you want to bring an advocate, because that advocate can assist you in understanding exactly what the IEP is saying, exactly what the goals are saying, exactly what accommodations they're saying, and they can help you, because most advocates truly understand the disability. They can help you understand whether or not this is going to work for you. Right. I don't suggest bringing a lawyer, because the way special education is set up, it's just a waste of money in my mind. You can you can write a letter to Department of Virginia, Department of Education, or whatever state education. And if you write the letter and tell them exactly what they're violating, they're going to give them 7 days to fix it.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's so you don't really need a lawyer, because the state will come back and say, oh, you have 7 days because under this provision, you're violating this special education law, and you have 7 days to meet with this parent and get her to agree or fix it the way she wants it. So, but I would suggest an advocate or educational specialist, because educational specialists, again, they understand specifically what would be helpful for a child with whatever special needs or disability they have. Like with my son who had autism, the educational specialist was able to come in and say, hey, he needs this type of system. You need to have what they call a PEC system. You need, because he was nonverbal. Different things that a visual schedule for him, so he knows what's going next, because they don't transition well, and literally help them set up what his accommodations would be to assist him in school. Right. So, for me, any parent that's new, I have a resource, and I'm sorry I didn't get to give it to you so they could click on it. But there are resources in Virginia where you can actually call and they will come out and assist you with your IEPs.
Yeah, and I can put that resource. I'll get it from you after the show, and I can put it on my website. I have a special area on my website, speaknowholdyourpeace.com. You can click on the resource tab, and there's resources from that I've obtained from guests. So that we definitely can share that. So if you're seeing this and you want the information, don't worry about it. I'll make sure I put it on the website tonight, so you can have that. All right. So let me ask you this: what happens if they don't make the changes or fix it in 7 days?
Well, what happens is if they don't make the change and fix it in 7 days, the state comes in.
Okay.
Because the thing about what people don't understand, that's why parents are so powerful. School systems get a certain amount of money per child when they provide them special education services. If they consistently violate state and federal law, that money could be taken away from them. Oh. So say, for instance, I have a child that has that's getting special education services, and the state and federal government is giving me $100,000 per child. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens if you keep violating what the state, when the federal government will come in and be like, okay, we're going to snatch all these $100,000s from all these children, and you will educate them anyway. And if they
Wow.
continue to not do well, then the state and federal government will come in and run that city's special education department to get it to the level that it is. So, I mean, those are extreme measures, but so it's like they don't ignore a letter from the Department of Education, Virginia Department of Education, say, hey, you have 7 days. Because if you don't do it in 7 days, somebody from the Virginia Department of Education will drive to your school and have you explain to them why it is not done. And then they will meet with the parent and be like, okay, it is not done. So we need this to get this done. And and literally that will cause them to lose funding. Because if you got somebody from Richmond got to come to your city, come to Hampton, be like, I wrote you a letter and you didn't do this. It's almost unheard of. You're going to do it.
Right.
Because you don't want them to show up.
Yeah, money talks too. When that fund it gets hectic when that funding gets affected. So yeah, not to say that they do it just for the money, but in terms of getting the IEP, how often do they have to do a reevaluation? Is that like every year, every 3 years, 2 years?
Well, an IEP needs to be written every year, but what they call a triannual IEP is done every 3 years. So every 3 years, they're supposed to assess the child to see progress or any regressions of progress. If you're like most parents, we don't do it. I didn't do it for my son. I had to diagnose of autism. I knew what his autism was, so I didn't get him assessed, which I would say to a parent is a bad mistake because as he was leaving school, I didn't have any current assessments on him. Gotcha. So I say to parents, every 3 years, whether you think he's the same or not, make them reassess him.
Right.
Because that way, if your child's like my son who had autism and they're not going to graduate high school with a degree and go work in the workforce, you have assessments. So when it's time to transition them into the adult world, you have current things that you can use to help you. Right. I found that because I didn't have current things, I had to go back and get other people to assess him, which the school should have done for me.
Right.
So his transition from out of school to more of a adult special needs programs took me longer.
Got you.
So I say to any parent, please, do the reassessment every 3 years. They got to do it under the law. They have to do it. Make them pay for it. Make them do it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to get it for, you ain't got to pay for it. Why not?
Yeah. Make them do it.
It's extra support and extra documentation that you don't have to get laid on instead of running around, you'll be running around trying to get all these assessments after they leave schools, and why not get them now? So just get what they give you,
Yes.
Can an IEP meeting be held without the parent being present?
If they know the parent is not going to be present, technically it's not supposed to be. They do hold them sometimes. So one day I got caught in traffic and I couldn't make the IEP. So I told them to go ahead and hold the IEP without me. Because I had already seen the IEP, like I said, my meetings could be 5 hours. So they had learned to write his IEP extensively and send it to me to get approval prior to actually having a meeting. That's so funny. I had already got the IEP. I had already went over it. I already made my points. We had already, quibbled over whatever we was going to, quibble over.
Right.
And so the final product I was fine with. So yeah, I let them hold the IEP without me. Sometimes they'll hold it with you on the phone if you can't make it. But for the most part, they're not supposed to unless you give them permission to hold it without you.
Can they change something in the IEP without having a meeting?
No, they're not supposed to. They have to have a meeting for because it has to have an addendum. So you can say, they were like, well, we want to do an addendum meeting. And they can literally have an addendum meeting without you being there. But again, if you don't sign off on any changes, it's a waste of time. So it's like having an IEP meeting without you. They can hold the IEP meeting, but if you don't sign the IEP form, it's like they just wasted their time.
Right. Do you think, let me ask you this, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. Do you think, two questions. Two-part question. Do you think schools are quick to label children or African-American children special education and or not or but that question also that question, and do you think parents uh tend to label their children special education rather quickly?
That's one of those catch-22s. And I'm gonna be honest with you. If I get every child an IEP, I would. Why? Because it safeguards in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like an IEP, if I can prove that you get say you get suspended, and I can prove that it's like you're impulsive
Mm-hmm.
and you have ADHD, and they suspend you for 10 days, if I can show that it is a result of your disability, they have to return you to school the next day, and that
Gotcha.
suspension is wiped away. So
Gotcha.
for me, IEP is not a hard thing for a child. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Because it has procedural safeguards in it that actually would help some of our children, because some of our children's behaviors is not, it's because of trauma or whatever else is going on in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So they come to school and they have a hard time assimilating because, that's just not, it's harder for them. I'm not giving them excuses, but I'm saying for our children, the African Americans, IEP can be beneficial, especially for those children that have a lot of behaviors.
Right. Right.
Now, do I think sometimes the school system do pick children with IEPs for African Americans? I think yes, but I think it's for the reason that I'm talking about. I used to work in TDT for high school, but when I went to elementary school, I watched how this one assistant principal
Mm-hmm.
had children that were having severe behavior problems.
Right.
And she literally used the IEP as a means to keep them in school
Wow. Wow.
because
Mm.
their behaviors were so extreme that she would have had to expel them or suspend them. So
Right.
she literally found the most slimmest reason, got them an IEP, got them behavior intervention plans, and helped manage their behaviors that way
Mm.
so that she wouldn't have to suspend these children.
Right.
Now, is that the best way? No, but it was, in her mind, the only resource I have to help children.
Right. Right.
As far as parents, there are always going to be some parents that, want the attention and want to say their children have special needs. What I have found, most parents don't want their child labeled.
Gotcha.
So they're not going to ask for help. Even if they see that there's an issue, they don't want their child labeled because again, parents look at their children's behaviors or disabilities or special needs as a reflection of themselves and their parenting and what they did or did not do, which is not true.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times parents will not just randomly seek assistance with an IEP because they don't want that label on their child. They think that it's going to follow them for the rest of their life. And in reality, it doesn't, because even with an IEP, if you go to college, they don't have an IEP so much, but they have a 504 plan that does some of the same things as an IEP. So you can send a child to college and they can get the same accommodations and assistance so they can be successful in college.
Right.
And like in state of California, if your child had an IEP in California, your child went to college for free.
Wow. Wow.
So
That's
it's like I said, it's your perception on it. If you look at it as a tool that could be helpful in ensuring that your child is educated correctly
Mm-hmm.
and that your child gets all the assistance that they need to be the best they can be in being educated, then boom, IEP is beneficial. But if you look at it as my child's being labeled, it's a hindrance, somebody's going to talk about my child, or you look at it as a shame or guilt thing, then you're not going to be wanting to have an IEP.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because when I was teaching, I had a child who was in 5th grade. She gave her 2 social promotions. She was on a kindergarten level reading, 1st grade reading level, and the parents refused to have her tested. So the school actually called Child Protective Services for neglect. And they wound up getting her tested, and we found out she was mentally retarded. So it's crazy. Like, some of the parents that don't want it, that do want it. Can a parent get any type of financial assistance if their child has an IEP?
No, it's not automatic. If your child, like autism, it's considered what we call a catastrophic diagnosis because it's a lifelong diagnosis. They don't see them ever getting well. You know what I'm saying? Same with ID, intellectual disability. It's a catastrophic diagnosis. It's something, if a child is seen at a certain age only having a 60 IQ, then they don't see, unless something miraculous happened, that child's IQ is not going to really raise that much. So those type of diagnoses, more than likely you can get some type of SSI. They do give SSI for developmentally delayed. Say you have a child that comes into the world and they were premature and they have all these different medical issues, like, they're slow to speech, slow to walk, they're delayed. They will give them SSI up until a certain age, and then they will want a reevaluation to make sure the child hasn't got enough interventions to help them progress to be better.
Okay.
So there are certain disabilities that get better and other disabilities that don't get better.
Right.
But I've seen people get it for ADHD. Again, it just depends on the severity of the special needs.
Okay. What is the difference between an IEP and a 504 plan? Because that seems to be the question that a lot of parents ask me, and they asked me that when I was teaching also, and as a case manager. What is the difference between the two?
IEP is more of a plan for how your child be educated. So it's like, this is how your child's going to be educated. This is your child's experience. A 504 plan is more about how the school will remove barriers to educate your child. Gotcha. So they're two separate things. So an IEP is, like I said, the process we write goals. A 504 is, say for instance, you have a child that has ADHD. They take their medication, but it doesn't solve, medication doesn't solve ADHD. So this child may just need breaks. They need small group testing. They may just need a read aloud, things like that. Extra pencils. You can, in the 504, you can basically put anything, but it's basically saying, I'm going to remove the barrier so that your child can still have the same educational experience as a quote unquote normal child. What an IEP is saying, your child has a specific disability, and because of this disability, your child doesn't learn the same as everybody else. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna put in accommodations, and I'm gonna make goals, and I'm gonna come up with a blueprint plan to assist your child to hopefully get them to the same standard as everybody else. And if I can't get them to the same standard as everybody else, to educate them as best of my ability.
Right. All right. So I got one more question, and I'm gonna wrap it up with this last question. A parent comes to you and they say, "Hey, look, my child has an IEP. I don't feel that it's working. What should I do?" What would you tell that parent?
Well, for me, I need to see the IEP. Mm-hmm. And then I need you to tell me why you don't think it's working. Okay. And then once I understand that, then I can give you more direction. It could be as simple as, hey, request a meeting. Again, you write them, written request. They have 30 days to give it to you. Sit down with them and tell them why you don't think the IEP is working. Gotcha. If that doesn't work, then if you've tried that and you're going to the school and you're saying, hey, the IEP is not working, and they refuse, then I teach you how to write a letter. Like I said, the most effective letters that you send to any of the states, you find a provision in which, so that's why you got to get somebody to help you, because you have to go in. You say to me, well, they're not, like a parent says, well, his reading is not improving. Mm-hmm. Then I have to go in to see where I could take the provision out of the law that says they're not doing their job by helping him improve his reading. Because the point of an IEP is they're supposed to make progress every year. If they're not making progress, then you're violating the IEP.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, like I said, it depends on the information I have in front of me, because I don't have a problem writing letters to the state, because what I have found, that's more effective than getting lawyers. That's more effective than arguing with the school. My approach to special education is, I'm not arguing with you. Right. This is what you said you were going to do. If you're not doing it, then I'll write a letter saying he's violating his IEP because they said that he was going to do this and they have not done this. And because they have not done, they have violated this provision of the IEP, and I need you to help me get them to do this. You know what I'm saying? And that's
Right.
basically all the letter has to say. Because what happened with parents when they write to the state, they write this long letter about how the school ain't doing this, and that, but they don't pinpoint. And for me, I get very specific. I had my son when he was going to elementary school. They didn't have a middle school program
Mm-hmm.
for autism. They only had high school, and they wanted to send him to high school, and I refused. So I wrote a letter. In that letter, I wrote down 6 provisions that they violated, and I wrote the letter on a Thursday. The school had called me on Monday, and
Mm.
by the next school year, because I kept them in elementary for an additional year, by the next school year, they had a middle school program for him
Wow.
because
Okay.
I was extremely specific because I wanted the state to explain to me why they did not have to have a middle school program for autism when
Right.
you were going to put them in a classroom full of children that were 15 and 16 and he was only 11.
Right. Right.
So I got very specific and I was very meticulous. I went through the law, I looked at every provision and I picked out what was specific for what I was trying to explain. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something I want to teach parents to be a great advocate for your child. And this will be the last thing I say. To
That's
be a
fine.
great advocate kid for your child, you must know your rights and you must know the law.
Right. Right.
Familiarize yourself with the law. It can be tedious, it can be annoying, but if you want your child to have the best educating experience, you must know your rights and you must educate yourself. Now, if you cannot, if it's too much and you don't understand, then fine. There are lots of advocates out there that will sit down with you and explain to you the law to you and help you write letters. I don't believe in lawyers because again, lawyers just take your money and they do the same thing that an advocate does or which you can do for yourself.
Right.
But learn the law in your state, learn IDEA, and learn what your child has a right to under the IEP laws and 504s, and then ensure that the school follows what they say they're doing.
Right. Right. Terry, thank you so much for coming on. Like you were a bunch of knowledge, and I hope somebody got something out of this. And I'm glad that parents can go back and look at this on the Speak Now Hold Your Peace YouTube channel or the Speak Now Hold Your Peace Facebook page. This is a live show, but you haven't missed any of the information because it will be on both of those social media platforms. Also, Terry, the resources that you have, I'll get them from you. And anybody who wants those resources, you can go to speaknowholdyourpeace.com and click the resource tab, and I will put that on there as soon as I get it. Terry, I want you to stay on the line. Don't go nowhere. I'm gonna close out the show and stay on the line. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Love all of y'all, and just stay safe. Be smart about your decisions, and continue to advocate for your child because he or she is worth it. So I'm going to leave you on that. I love you all, and thank you for tuning in. Have a good one.
Thank you for watching the Speak Now Hold Your Peace live broadcast. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and join us on the Speak Now Hold Your Peace Facebook group.